Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourself will free our mind. For me, those are the most powerful words ever written, in my opinion. And that is why Marcus Garvey is pretty much my hero. I have a lot of heroes, but Marcus Garvey is number one. And those words to me talk about accountability, being accountable for ourselves as a people moving forward. And we know that we just celebrated Emancipation Day yesterday. And the Emancipation Day celebration is really us celebrating over 190 years of being freed in the Caribbean, freed our ancestors, freed from slavery. But in 2025, can we still say those words from Marcus Garvey? Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Yes, in 2025, there's no chains on our foot, there's no chains on our hands, but are we really free in our minds? Did we really emancipate ourselves from mental slavery? So the story I want to focus on today is coming out of the emancipation movement, and it's all about the Pan-African movement. And when you talk about the Pan-African movement, you can't find bigger names to do with the Pan-African movement than Henry Sylvester Williams and Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And I know a lot of times we have conversations about Trinidad and Tobago, and 99.9% of our conversation is always about Trinidad and Jamaica and the rivalry, and people are talking about Trinidadians and Jamaicans don't like each other. But what about these stories? Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the inspiration that Marcus Garvey got from Henry Sylvester Williams. Henry Sylvester Williams, the founder, the person that named the Pan-African movement. I know when we talk about Pan-African movement and Pan-Africanism, Marcus Garvey is most likely the face of the Pan-African movement. Whenever the term Pan-African movement comes up, the first thing people think about is Marcus Mosiah Garvey. But Henry Sylvester Williams, the one that coined the phrase Pan-African movement. So today we want to talk about Marcus Garvey and Henry Sylvester Williams and that relationship between Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. So just to be transparent, Henry Sylvester Williams is someone that I found out about on my own while doing research, because since I became an adult and I have been so interested in the Pan-Africanism and the Africa liberation movement, like I've done research and I've always been doing research on my own, and this is how I'm learning more and more every day about some of these great leaders in Trinidad and Tobago, leaders in Barbados. And the thing is that as a young man in the school system in Jamaica in the 80s, in the 90s, we did not learn about these people. We barely learned about Marcus Garvey back then in the school system. Like, you learn more about Marcus Garvey because of the music and the Rastafarian movement in Jamaica. So we did not learn a lot about these great leaders back then. We knew more about Christopher Columbus and the British monarch than we knew about these great Black Caribbean leaders and African leaders. So Henry Sylvester Williams, born 1869 and he died in 1911. And as I said, the founder, the first person to coin the term Pan-Africanism. And he also was a part of the African Association that was established September 1897, and he was the secretary of that organization. And as I said, the first person to coin the term the Pan-African movement, and the first Pan-African conference was held in the Westminster Hall in the United Kingdom, July 23rd to 25th, 1900. So that was before Marcus Garvey. And as I said, Marcus Garvey would have gained inspiration from Henry Sylvester Williams. And it is so interesting because these two men have a lot in common, and I'll just break down some of the things that these two men have in common. So when I study these two men very closely, Marcus Garvey and, as I said, Henry Sylvester Williams, when I studied them very closely, like, it is so obvious that Marcus Garvey would have gained inspiration from Henry Sylvester Williams, because they align so perfectly in terms of what their interest was. And Henry Sylvester Williams was, I think at one point he was a lawyer. He was also like a journalist. He's a community organizer. And he was also in the United Kingdom. And we knew that Marcus Garvey also, when he got deported from the USA, he went to the United Kingdom, and he also had a paper that he wrote also in the UK. So you can see that the connection was there, and that he gained a lot of inspiration from Henry Sylvester Williams. And I would say that I don't think that there would have been a Marcus Garvey without Henry Sylvester Williams. And so when we talk about things in the Caribbean, especially between Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, it is so interesting that most time we focus on these rivalry and the idea that Jamaicans don't like Trinidadians, or Trinidadians don't like Jamaicans. But when you look in history, and I have a lot more Trinidadians and Jamaicans that have made their impact, made their mark across the world when it comes down to uniting Africans in the diaspora and in Africa. But most of those stories go untold, because I guess it's easier to go with controversy. And what I noticed too, a lot of times when you do like videos like these, and when I'm doing my research, and when I'm on YouTube and I'm looking up information for these videos, any video to do with uniting blacks in the diaspora in Africa, a lot of those videos are not viewed a lot. Like, the views are very low on those videos, as opposed to videos that are very controversial or videos that seem to divide us. So I think that is something that we need to work on. But as I said, like, in my research, I would not have known that Marcus Mosiah Garvey, he was inspired by a Trinidadian who was the founder of the Pan-African movement. I would not have known that without my research. Sound off in the comment section and let me know, like, if you're anywhere in the Caribbean and this is the first time you're hearing this, let me know in the comment section. And this says a lot about our education system within the Caribbean, because, as I said, a lot of great leaders, I think back in the 80s, the most I learned about from other Caribbean islands, like say Trinidad and Barbados, Guyana, was like great cricketers. Like, we used to talk about cricketers like Sir Garfield Sobers and some cricketers from back in 1907. A lot of those cricketers, I remember having a book we studied when you're studying history, and we talk about some of the great cricketers. But in terms of the Pan-African leaders, some of the great leaders that were trying to unite us in the diaspora, never heard anything about these guys until I got older and I started doing my own research. And what I find very interesting is that Marcus Mosiah Garvey and Henry Sylvester Williams is almost like doing my research on especially Henry Sylvester Williams, because I've done extensive research on Marcus Garvey for decades now. But Henry Sylvester Williams, when doing my research on him, it just seemed like him and Marcus Garvey, they were the same people. Like, their ideology, like everything, their mindset was so in sync. It's almost like they're the same person. Let me give you some examples. So, like, studying Marcus Garvey, one of the things that I realized from early out studying Marcus Garvey, the words of Marcus Garvey, is that Marcus Garvey was more about accountability, uniting, and your mindset, a positive mindset. And Marcus Garvey, in most of his writings, you will not see a lot about reparation with Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, the only time you'd see reparation with Marcus Garvey is when Marcus Garvey is talking about repatriation. like getting African Americans to go back to Africa to build Africa, getting Africans within the Caribbean to go back to Africa and to help to build Africa. And that, in my research and my readings of Marcus Garvey, the whole idea of repatriation and reparation, that was the only time I've seen those reparation mentioned. But Marcus Garvey was about 100% about education. Marcus Garvey was big on education. Marcus Garvey idea is that, like, in order for us to move forward as a people, we have to educate ourselves. And that was one of his main teachings. And to empower ourselves through wealth. And I believe that there was a writing of Marcus Garvey that I read years ago that was talking about the most important color. It's not black or it's not white. It's the color of the money, the green. Like that people will respect you when you have money, when you have wealth, when you have power. You can enter any space. So that was some of his driving force. As I said, education and to empower ourselves through financial wealth. And that is why he always preached about going back to Africa. Because another thing that Marcus Garvey also, one of his ideology was that we'll never be able to be equal in the land of those who enslave us. So like in North America, we would never be able to be on the same level as our enslavers. That was one of his philosophy. And so that's why the repatriation and going to Africa to build Africa was such a big thing for Marcus Garvey. And I realized also that when doing my research on Henry Sylvester Williams, education was a big deal for Henry Sylvester Williams. And in Canada, while he was in Canada, he was part of the so-called black elites, like the black elites in Canada, the well-educated, the people that are in certain space because of their education and because of their wealth. So he also believed in that. And so I found that to be very, very interesting that they, a man from Trinidad and Tobago that started this whole Pan-African movement, and we see like our Jamaican Marcus Garvey that was inspired by it, and that they were so closely aligned. And that was over 100 years ago. But my question is, after all of that, in 2025, are we anywhere close to the vision that Henry Sylvester Williams would have had, like from way back as 1900? Or when Marcus Garvey formed the United Negro Improvement Association? And I would say, I believe that we are far off, and that is the unfortunate thing. Yes, we're celebrating Emancipation Day, we're celebrating Emancipation Month, but as a people, I believe that we are self-inflicting a lot more harm to ourselves, to our communities. When you look at two countries in particular, we're talking about Jamaica and we're talking about Trinidad and Tobago, and you look at our young black men in society that we're inflicting pain on our own people. Like when you look at the high rate of single parent home, and like I've always said, like it's hard to trust a man who can have kids out there without knowing how their kids are, if their kids are going to bed hungry or not. It is hard to trust a man who can live, who can get up every day knowing that you have like tons of kids out there, and chances are your own seed, your own flesh and blood is going to bed hungry. So I believe that yes, it's so unfortunate because, as I said, Henry Sylvester Williams, what he as a Afro-Trinidadian was able to accomplish over 100 years ago, going to the United Kingdom, going to Canada, and the education that he was able to attain back then, what Marcus Garvey as a Jamaican from a very, very poor background, coming out of a home where his parents were slaves, and just the accomplishment, what they were able to achieve over 100 years ago, and the foundation that they tried to build for us going forward, to see in 2025 that we're still struggling as a people. And it is so unfortunate. And I know that there are people that are doing well, but as a community on a whole, as a community in general, we are not as far as we should be. So guys, sound off in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on this one. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. And remember, peace. I'm out.